Amy Kemp. Welcome to the Mitchell Port Unleashed podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yes, yes. And I'm excited too, because I feel like this is going to be one of these good conversations for entrepreneurs and for them to take some things that are fruitful to help build
Mhm.
into themselves and things like that, right?
Yeah, entrepreneurship um, has a way of working things out in you that nothing else does.
No, no, absolutely. And I know all the well with that building this podcast for the last 8.5 years. And what is the defining moments of success when it's an entrepreneur? Because I feel like some folks think it's about the money. But let's peel the
Oof.
layers back. Let's really get into the logistics of what that success truly looks like.
Mhm. It is partially about the money. However, in a different way than most people think, I see people swing a lot. Maybe they leave a very stressful corporate job and they're going to be an entrepreneur. And I see them swing way too far in the other direction where the money doesn't matter at all. And so I'm pragmatic, and I do think entrepreneurship for most people is a luxury in terms of I'm not sure that I could have built the size and scope of businesses that I've built without knowing that I had a partner and my husband who had a very stable job where we had full family benefits. So I always like to preface that there were a lot of support nets that we had in place that allowed me to travel this path that I think people skip over when they say, oh, just quit your job and start something. Well, it's not always accessible for the single parent or for someone who's taking care of an aging parent and needs to be available. They're just, you really have to think fully about the picture. The definition of success, I have three things that I look at. Is this paying me what I'm worth? So it's like a triangle. I'm holding my hands up like a triangle if you're listening. Is it paying me what I'm worth? Does it give me the quality of life that I want? Meaning, when I'm working, how much I'm working, taking into account my other family and life commitments. And then the third side of the triangle for me is, does it align with my passion, my purpose, what I'm best at, my unique genius? Is it bringing that into the world? And so those are the three things that I'm constantly both evaluating success based upon, but also making decisions through. That's kind of like my filter through which I'll decide whether I take something on or not.
I love that. I love that. So much
Yeah.
value just with what you said there. Let's get into my this is what I love doing here. The questions. The questions are the most important thing, right? Why do you think genius ideas tend to flop in when it comes down to entrepreneurship? Like people will have like an
Mm,
idea, like that goal, that thing they want to attain, but it flops in the process. Let's walk us through that
mm.
process.
Even if it's a really great idea, sometimes it does. So in my work, I believe most creative pursuits, which I think of building a business as one of the most creative pursuits, fail not because of a lack of skill or a lack of need for that idea to come into the world, but because we have so much noise in our heads that slows us down and keeps us from taking the tiny millimeter steps that would actually bring that into fruition. So, as an example, a habit of thinking that I see happen a lot with entrepreneurs is that they swing back and forth between fantasy and catastrophe to such extreme levels that it robs them of being fully present and in the moment and taking those tiny, seemingly insignificant, even boring steps that actually create growth in a business or bring an idea into the world. And so I'll give you this is a really great story of an example of this that will make it very real. I wrote and published my first book in the last 3 years. Well, when you publish a book, you don't have access. People start pre ordering the book, but you don't have access to the dashboard that tells you how many books have been sold in the pre order phase until the day the book actually launches. So, those months leading up to it, you kind of know people are buying the book, but you don't know how many. Well, in my mind, for some reason, I had created a number that I thought I would hit based on Amazon rankings, based on what people were saying, based on what I was seeing on social media. And I thought, this is how many books have sold already. I don't, again, I have no idea where I got the number, but my brain does that very easily. It like goes to this fantasy, right? So the day comes where my book is actually published. I have a call with my publisher where someone from their staff walks me through that dashboard and I can see, and she gets to the page where the number of books that's actually sold. And it was probably a third of my number. And when I tell you I went to full catastrophe from fantasy, and the swing was so hard, like I could barely catch my breath. It was, why did I do this? This is a complete failure. This never should have happened. um, I invested all of this time and energy and money into this pursuit. And for what? I mean, I was just one step away from losing my house in my mind, right? I mean, this was like I go full catastrophe. I walk out to my kitchen. I'm in my office now. I walk out to my kitchen and my 18-year-old son is out there. He says, Mom, did you ever find out about the books, how many you've sold? Because we'd been talking about that I couldn't see how many had sold. And I said, yeah, actually, I just found out the number and I am so disappointed. I just thought it would be way higher. And he kind of like cocked his head. He's like, well, isn't it like the first day? And it brought me, thankfully, we had that little interaction because it brought me right back to, oh my gosh, my living in the catastrophe of this robbed me even of a day of efforts I could be making to sell the book. Like the actual things that I could do to move the pursuit forward. But I'm so caught up in my head living in this story that isn't even real that I'm not in the present moment in action. I'm not moving things forward. And so that's just like a good example of what happens on a day-to-day basis for so many entrepreneurs.
No, I love that you say that because entrepreneurship is everything. I
Mm,
last guest I recorded with earlier today, we were chatting about the exact same thing and looking at life, work life, right? I'm not saying balance because there's no such thing. So that's just its own little caveat there.
mhm,
But it's all speaks to being resilient with everything that it is we want to do. And what does
mhm,
resilience look like? And I think that you have to have the right community in front of you to be able to climb to where it is you need to get to, right? Some folks look at followers as a thing on like social media or subscribers. Those are all great things to have. But are those people in your community going to actually support your vision? That book sale, that course, that, potential coaching program or that merchandise that you're selling. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Mm,
Yes, that attention economy can really do a number on entrepreneurs.
for sure,
uh,
for sure.
because a lot of really profitable businesses might not succeed in the attention economy. Now, some do. So it's not an all or nothing proposition, but success there doesn't necessarily translate to success in the real measurements that I use in terms of business impact on people, profitability, the things that are really life changing for entrepreneurs.
No, for sure. So speak to
Mhm.
this real quick because I feel like writing a book, right? You got to think about scaling. That word scaling. Now, talk about how would you break down scaling without burning out, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Oh my gosh. Were you in my life? Have you been listening?
I'm just here. I know a little one or two things once this turns on, you know?
I may say something controversial, but I'm not sure I want to scale. Um, I want to impact more people, but my business, I think of like a boutique. It is very specialized work I do. I consider it to be sacred work in many ways, but I don't think it can be systematized. Now, can my message reach more people? Absolutely. That's why I wrote the book, right? But what I have found is that I am absolutely drained at the thought of scaling. I am absolutely emboldened, inspired, made feel more alive at the idea of holding space for really high level leaders. I, that is my thing. Like, that is the thing where if I get too far away from it, I do not enjoy the work that I'm doing. And so, while I have very intentionally promoted the book on a very consistent and like scheduled way, it is also done in a very boundaried way where I'm giving an allotment of my time and energy, but I am not disrupting the thing that I really love and that really creates life change and growth in my business. Um, because I'm not sure that the work I do requires scaling. I'm just not sure. And I've had so many experts tell me that I should, or that what I have is scalable. But again, it provides an abundant income for my family. It's work I love. And then the third side of my triangle, I work very reasonable hours. I don't work on in the evenings. I don't work on weekends, I'm not sacrificing that. And so I think there is a decision I've made there. Um, but I'm open to being challenged on it too. I've just really had a strong reaction to that.
You know, here's where I would second what you're saying. And I think this is where the audience may be like, okay, I see what's going on here. I think what you're speaking to is sometimes scalability. You may not have the end goal necessarily set at the end of the destination because
Mhm.
of the glorifying. It's like if you go viral on a social media post, a lot of folks are not ready for that attention. They're not, right?
Yes.
So when you get that attention, it's what you're going to now do with it. And I think when you're
Mm.
going to scale a business, yes, the money hand over fist is amazing. You take the vacations, you meet the people, you do all this stuff. You can still do that by working on what's in your means. My grandfather always said is you live within your means and you don't
Mhm.
manage a lot what's on your plate. And I think that's where people get confused in entrepreneurship, in content creation, is that they put so much things on their plate and they don't know now how to digest what's going
Yeah.
on.
And you don't know what you want in exchange from the business. I'm super clear what I want from my business. I want to work like a teacher and get paid like a CEO, meaning I want to work from 8 to 3:30 Monday through Friday, have summers lighter. I still work some in the summer but lighter. I want breaks off when my kids have off, right? That's really fundamental to what I've built. Um, but I want to get paid like a CEO. And so far, I haven't had to scale anything to do that. I've had
I
to
feel like every
do.
day we're scaling though, right? If you think
That's
about it,
true.
right?
You're
Every day
probably
we're
right.
scaling. Yeah.
I'm probably scaling. I probably am scaling without, I guess what I mean by scaling that I feel like is the buzzword is like clickbait and funnels and really this social media idea of scaling. In fact, so the reason I talked to a marketing expert last week and I actually think that what they were proposing, they could deliver for me in terms of scaling, like broadening the scope, right? But it was
And
also, I watched all of their content about the work they do, and it was a lot about you have to grind, you have to work long hours, you have to hustle, you had to. And I said to her, that is opposed to every tenet of every principle I work with clients on. I'm all for the ambitious goal with a boundary. Like, I think goals should have boundaries on them as well, right? Our ambition should be boundaried. And so, do I think you can deliver? Absolutely. Could I do that? Absolutely. Do I want to? No.
absolutely.
So that's the question.
Yeah, and I'll look at it from this perspective too, because I have so many different entrepreneurs, and I speak to content creators, and I speak to different folks in whatever realm that they're in. And the reality of it is that scalability can also go into free marketing as well. I think that's a different take that I would bring as
I
position
agree.
because
What
when
do
you
you
get
mean
on
by free marketing?
free marketing, like podcasts like these,
Hmm.
right? a podcast like this, or you're doing virtual conferences, or you're doing like a book signing and things like that, or
Hmm.
maybe you're attaching your book signing to a speaking gig that you have in, say, for instance, Vegas or something like that, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's where folks get wrong of what scaling truly is. I get it, the whole click
Okay.
funnel, doing all that,
Yes.
but then you have the marketing aspect where you're scaling through marketable abilities as well, you know?
I'm doing all of the things that you just said, right? I'm going to Atlanta next month to speak. I'm doing a luncheon with 150 women coming up, in another month. I have calls every single day with prospective clients that I'm generating, that I'm really genuinely investing in building relationships with people. If that's scaling, oh, I'm in for that. I'm
Yeah, I think
so in
it's
for that.
I think
Yes.
it's a different way to look at it too, right? And I
Hmm.
think that scaling can, yeah, you want to put everything behind a click funnel and a paywall and this and automation.
Hmm.
Can I tell people this? Here's a little secret. Here's a little spoiler. You can have automation even in your day-to-day life, especially with whatever type of iPhone that you're using, right?
Yep.
The productivity of AI. Incorporate AI in your productivity skills, into your building branches, into ways to simply sit here to know how to be actively productive in your day to day. Doesn't matter if you work a 9 to 5, having the tools set up. Understand, yeah, you have your family life, you have your relationship life, you have your work life, and then you have your me time. And me time can be just sitting on the couch, watching one episode of your favorite show. Maybe it's a little bit of video gaming. You feel what I'm saying? So there's many
Yes.
different ways to scale up, not say scale down because you can't scale down. What do you want trying to scale down for? You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
No, no. Yes. Or
For
it's the
sure.
question of like, can I have a greater impact with the same investment of time and energy? And is there a creative way to do that? I just heard this morning. It said constraints inspire creativity. Oh, they were talking about AI. They were talking about the Chinese company who came out with the cheaper way to do AI because they had these constraints on their budget. And so the engineers basically became really innovative and came up with a new way to do it. I think that's what I always did as a mom of three, a wife with a husband who was coaching and really busy, is that I had constraints on my time and energy, right? And so it forced me to be innovative in my entrepreneurship, and I had to work within those constraints. But a lot of times I figured out how to do things more effectively, or I figured out better ways to make a business more profitable because I had those constraints. So it's all how you perceive the constraint too. Is it like a factory for innovation and creativity, or is it a reason you can't grow the business? Depends
No,
on how
well
you see
said.
it.
No, well said. And I think that like it's conversations like these that are high energy conversations that I think some folks miss in the tea leaves,
Mm.
right? They may see that, okay, this guy's constant 500 plus episodes, guests every single week. You can cherry pick some of the content that's on the YouTube side or the Instagram side, but I think the attention rate with a lot of folks now is like 3 to 5 seconds. I saw what I've needed to see. Do I really need to listen to the episode? Yes, you got to listen to the episode. Yes, you have
Mm.
to go to Amy Kemp's website and purchase the book, get the Audible, get the physical copy. I'm gonna post receipts this all 2025. The slang talk posted receipts. Most likely, I'm gonna buy your book, right?
Mm.
Because I'm supporting one, the creator. Two, I'm gonna get it on Audible because I rather do things with
Listen.
Audible. But what it
Hmm.
is, it's like I'm purchasing your book because I believe in you and I believe in your business and I believe in the things that you're wanting to do. And I think if more folks, if like say for instance in the world, it's what over 8 billion folks are in this world. If 10% of people actually supported the creator out of that 8 billion, I understand some of them are gonna be young kids, whatever, but like mom, dad, relative, whoever,
Hmm.
support the creator, it would make the world a better place.
Mm.
You know
I
what I mean?
agree.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. So let's get into, I kind of let it up in a way, productivity, right?
Hmm.
Productivity hacks. What are top 5 productivity hacks that top founders swear by from your point of view?
The number one that I work on with my clients is what you alluded to earlier, but I call it scheduled guilt-free playtime. So if you can imagine a circle and it's sort of like a cycle, like a life cycle, at the top, I would put scheduled guilt-free playtime. In my calendar, I know that tonight I'm going to dinner with a group of friends that I really love to be with. That means that day at work, I have something to look forward to at the end of my day. I know I'm going to be done with work and have a reward. And so I'm going to have a higher quality of work, a more focused kind of work, as I'm going through the day with that deadline that is something positive in the end to look forward to. Which then when I go to the actual play, I'm fully present because I had a great day at work. I wasn't distracted. I really put in my best effort, right? Which then, so I have a higher quality of work. I go to the playtime. I don't feel guilty at all about being there. Here's the real kicker. Then your brain, the pathways that inspire, like that allow creative ideas to flow through, solutions to problems at your business, maybe just like a new perspective from that conversation. Someone says one little thing like that, that constraints inspire creativity. I was like, oh, there's something there, like that came from a conversation. And so, um, that creativity, like letting yourself play, actually then brings you back to work even better. The most important investment that I see entrepreneurs make in their businesses is scheduled guilt-free playtime, time away from their work to allow that whole process to happen. And not just like once in a while. I'm saying like on a regular basis that you have scheduled time where you're doing something where you are not thinking about your work, but you are fully immersed in the playing cards or the dinner with your friends or I used to go visit my husband's grandparents at assisted living. I was like a riot. They would tell me stories and I would just be fully present there. I love watching my kids compete. I just would go and like immerse myself in just the love of watching them do what they were great at. So, or even like you mentioned, reading a really great book, just a fun book, or watching a really great episode of some show on Netflix or a movie. Those are things that we need so that we can come back to our work even better.
Love that you say that, and I'll even add on to this too. And I still want to give you the time to give four more. I think
Yeah.
what I love that you're speaking to, Amy, is even have those solo times. Yes, I understand maybe some of us are dating in a relationship, but maybe going out, taking yourself out for a solo dinner, there's nothing wrong with it,
Ugh.
right? The person that you're dating would understand, right? They'll
Hmm.
understand, especially if you have these early conversations, early and frequent in the conversation. Movies as well, or even
Ugh.
making some time. A little bit of video gaming. I'm going to be honest. I play a little bit of video games. Right now, video
So
game
fun.
industry doesn't really have anything good out. I know one
Hmm.
of my friends in New York would be like, dude, we game share. What do you mean there's nothing good out? You know what I mean? Put some humor into it. But
Totally.
it's like taking that, 1 or 2 hours, nothing. I'm not so to say poo-pooing on video games. There's some great streamers that I know in this world. They're
Yeah.
making a great living for themselves, but just scale back some of that. And it's
Yep.
funny how we use scale, right? Scale back some of that and give back to
Hmm.
yourself and spend that 1 or 2 hours and things like that, because it does the body
Yep.
good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So scheduled guilt-free play. Another one I definitely would say is some sort of deeper thinking, reflective space in your day, preferably to start it out. I don't know. I mean, I drive an electric car, so I think of it like plugging in, right? Like I'm plugging in to charge, but I believe that like there is a source of energy, ideas, inspiration greater than me. And when I'm open to it, I when I plug in, I think of the movie, what was the movie with the blue people with the tails where they
Yeah, Avatar.
Avatar. Yeah, Avatar where
Hmm.
they were all connected to that tree of life. I think about that. It's like allow the inspiration to flow through you and out into the world. Don't carry the burden of having to create and figure everything out. But in order to do that, I've got to create time and space where I can receive. Um, and that's where my best ideas or nudges or whispers, follow up with that person, ask that person about this. I wonder about that. I receive those and then I just take action. My job is to create the space for the receiving. So I can't think of a leader I know who's inspired and doing great things, who is not making time for that. It seems like a silly productivity hack, but like, I don't know how else to create. I mean, I don't know how else to do it. So I definitely would say that. I think the third one that I use is just my 6 most important things list. I usually, by the end of the day, have created a list of the 6 most important things for the following day that need to get done. I most days don't get all 6 things done, but I will have a list because by the time I get into my office and start, if I don't have it, then I'm just doing reacting all day long. And I miss what I would call like the magic pockets of the day, which are like right before I got on the call right before this one, I had 20 minutes. You're never going to have 4 hours uninterrupted, right? But I had 20 minutes. And if I hadn't had that list where I was like, what is the most important thing that gets done today? I know I would have just gone to my email or my phone and then started responding. Instead, I went to that list as my anchor. I was like, okay, 20 minutes. Yep, I could get that one thing done. I needed to send a quote and a contract and an invoice to someone. I needed to talk to my assistant about it. Like I got that all set up in that 20 minutes. That was proactive instead of just responding. So definitely my 6 most important things list. And then I do a lot of power sessions where I a power session is so simple, but it is so profound, meaning I set a timer on my phone and only do one thing for 30 minutes. And it's usually the deeper thinking, the writing, the creation of a new marketing material, the um, I don't know, the preparation for an upcoming talk that I'm giving, or the post that I'm creating about something that was inspired by a conversation I just had. But those power sessions allow me to do the deeper thinking work where and I say to my assistant, like, I'm 30 minutes. I need 30 minutes, no interruptions. Like, I'm just going in. So I do use that a ton. And then the last thing that I would say in terms of just really like kind of getting the most out of the day or my work, which seems kind of backward because it doesn't feel very productive when I'm doing it, which is connecting with people, like having a really great, robust network of people with whom you are sharing this experience. I don't, I cannot imagine walking the road of entrepreneurship without that network of people, even if it's just to say, I'm thinking about this. I need a resource for that. How would you fund this? Do you think that investment is worth it? What about that? This person was being a jerk. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I need to process. And I'll speak just specifically to my people. Men have historically, in my observation, created a lot more spaces where this kind of thing happens for entrepreneurs than women. And so then women go through the same experiences, but they think something is wrong, that they're doing something wrong, that they have this really difficult employee situation, or they have this budget cash flow problem, and they don't have those like spaces where they're hearing from other people having the same experience. So it normalizes it. A lot of times I'm saying to clients, like, do you know that every business owner goes through that? And they're like, what? They do? They just don't know. So that network somehow makes things more productive and efficient. So those would be my 5.
You know, there's so much. Oh my goodness! Like you're speaking my tune because it's the same thing. You know, I've said this to it's like the timing of everything. My last guest, it's like a continue on conversation with someone
Mm,
else that's in my network. And it's like, I see it so many times that folks don't ever want to network the right, effective way because
mm.
it's kind of like, what's in it for me, but I'm not going to give you any more value. I can
Ugh,
pick up the phone, I can call you, I can either text you and ask you for maybe this software or maybe something that you're using, or can you give me some value to this, but you're not wanting to pour back into the other person. So you have to ask yourself is you can't go through the world like that. You have to
mhm.
double down and really believe in your own byproduct. Myself, I'm a natural connector, right? It's not only
Yes.
based off of this podcast, but it's everything that has to do with social media. But then I
Yep.
also know that my boundaries and my non-negotiables get put into play because there's some folks that will want to test those boundaries and
Mm,
non-negotiables, and then you don't have the right systems put in place. I've now
yeah.
eventually learned that through doing all the studying, going through the mentors, going through the books, and really
Yes.
just keeping the sharpening of the blade. That's why I love, I know he's can be a controversial figure, Dame Dash, who used to be the owner of Rockefeller. And he said something that made so much sense. He goes, I don't have time for stupid conversations. Right.
Mm,
And I know it sounds very harsh right away, but people are like, oh my God. But when you peel the layers back and you realize it's always he has to be sharpening his blade. He speaks highly about his wife. He speaks highly about the folks that he's in business with right now. But he always preaches fight the good fight and put your best foot forward by any
hmm.
means necessary. Because the
How do you
thing is,
think, how do you think, I'm sorry to interrupt, how do you think most people perceive networking that is not beneficial? You said like ineffective, or how do you think they perceive it, or how do they experience it, or what do they think they're doing?
you want to give him a master class today? I love it. You know, it's conversations like this that are the heart and soul, right? Here's what I'll say.
Mhm.
I think that people can perceive networking to be hard, but then there's some folks that perceive networking to be what's in it for me. And then
Yeah.
there's some that perceive networking as I don't want to do it. I can be self-taught. I'll figure it out
Yes.
myself. I can
Fiercely
stomp on all
independent.
yeah, I can stomp on all these people to get to the top. I'm sorry to tell you, you're not going to do that.
Yes.
Because if that's your mindset going into things, there's folks that hold the key that can get you into a certain door that at some
Oh.
point in time, all they have to do is say one thing to that one person and all those doors completely just pitfall on you. Right. And what we're just trying to say here and I'm not trying to be too controversial, know why you're doing what you're doing. Right. I think
Mhm.
we have people that may say anything that it is they want to say about us. Oh, Rory's too this. He's too outspoken. He's too opinionated. He's too this. He's too aggressive. But there's an underlying foundation that is I come from the school of tough love. You may not agree with what I'm saying right away, but there's a hidden meaning message right underneath when you actually peel all the layers back, right? When you
Yep.
peel the layers back, you'll say there's value into what it is he's saying. I might not like the delivery at the time, but he's not lying. And that comes from a contrarian approach, knowing how to weigh both sides of the conversation. So when it comes down to networking for me, I never abuse folks in my network. That's why it's easy to a degree to navigate in ebbs and flows. There's folks
Mhm.
that are in my DM on Instagram or my email. And that's one of the things I'll tell people right now. I started to do last week. I've reached out to specific guests that I never had a conversation with in such a long time over the last year and a half, 2 years ago. Specifics. I've reached out, hey, listen, how's things going on? Checking in. The two people I did it with so far, one responded back and the other one I know she's building her business. So she'll get to me when she needs to. But it's
Mhm.
like, I appreciate this warm, welcoming message because you don't know what that's going to spark. It could spark an
Totally.
idea. It could spark a coffee chat potentially. And I say, I'm not asking you to come back on the podcast. That's not why I'm reaching out. It's just I want to pour back into the community because you know what? In the area in Canada where I'm at in Toronto, greater Toronto area, I say this to folks is you never know who might come to your back door. Amy could get booked for a gig over here. And you know what? Rory, Toronto, I'm coming up there for like 3 days. What are some good spots for me to visit when I have some downtime? Well, you got Ripley's Aquarium. If you like baseball, go to Rogers Center for that time of the year. Watch the Blue Jays. You know what? Here's some places that you're gonna eat. Ba, ba, ba. If you got time and we want to meet up for a coffee, let's do that. Let's meet in person. Let me get you to do the book signing for me. You know what I mean? That's value.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? But people don't see it.
100%. I see networking as bringing down walls, stepping into someone else's world, getting their permission, like bringing down their wall with your interest and curiosity for no reason other than to bring it down. Now, once they bring their wall down and let you into their world, maybe they have something you need. Maybe you have something they need. Maybe they're just really cool.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
maybe, who knows? But it's going in with that lack of expectations about what the outcome will be, but with a sincere desire to like understand and see that person fully and to really know where they are.
Absolutely. And I love that you say that. You know, it even goes to podcasting, right? Some of the guys that I know, some of the guys that are doing some prolific work in this world. It doesn't matter if you get 30 listens to 3 million listens as long as you're putting and you're showing up, right? Show up.
Totally.
Show up. It could be one book sale this month, but then guess what? It could be 500 next month. You just don't know. It's ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
And especially in the time frame that we're in right now, we're in February, right? So you got to think the engine is building up. We just came out of Christmas, you know, January, the blues, the longest day of the longest month of the year is always going to be January. It's the blunders, it's the check the credit card statement, make sure that I'm paying my bills on time, Christmas gifts I purchased, all of these different things. Now you're getting into February. Now wherever you are, and depending on what season you're in, some folks have, you know, two seasons, spring and summer. Us, we get all four. You know, it's snow's starting to melt over here right now. It's a little bit warmer outside, so it's whatever, it's attainable. But tomorrow it could be frigid temperatures.
Yep.
What I'm just trying to say to folks is that you always have to ebbs and flows with what's going on, right?
Mhm.
The weather's always going to be there, right? Life's going to always happen. It's going to be rainy day. It's going to be cloudy days. But how are you showing up for yourself? How are you showing up for the people in your life, right? And that's the reason
Yes.
why I have a tight community of folks that we can pick up the phone and talk for 2 to 3 hours and it's nothing. Or I have voice notes that I can continuously have, you know, with a friend over in NMI. And, you know, he's got things going on, I got things going on. But when we pick it up, he'll send a voice note back and you keep it moving. That's
Yep.
networking. So it's like when folks you see kind of scale back and you're not really on the same wave as you, is because they don't know how to get to what it is they want to get to because maybe they missed the boat along the ways. It's like when you're coloring in the coloring book. You have all your, you know, pencil crayons and your crayons, but you have to color within the lines. Don't color outside the lines because then what's going to happen? The book ain't going to look really good. You know what I mean? So it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, hey, you got to show up for yourself, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like
Absolutely.
we covered so much in that little piece there. It's like our own little masterclass. You know, one of the things I want to say before we get out of here, right, is what are some things for you as far as that you're doubling down on in 2025 when it comes to business,
Mhm.
right? When it comes to how you want to show up for your community?
This is a really interesting question right now, too, because a lot of my clients aren't feeling particularly safe or certain right now. Um, and I would say I might echo some of their feelings on a day-to-day basis right now. And so I've been asking myself, what's the opportunity? And been just really being curious about how I can show up in service in a time like this where things do feel sort of volatile and chaotic and uncertain for many people, not for everyone, but for many people. And I think for my people that I know so well, it feels that way. And I think the main thing that I go back to over and over is like, What's my tolerance level for exposure to things that cause me to become dysregulated? And how do I expose myself enough that I'm educated and understand what's happening without getting consumed and being thrown out of creation? I want to stay in creation. So if I want to be educated, but more than that, I want to be in service. And so if the education is pulling me out of being able to serve and show up at my best, then I have to limit my exposure. And so that's kind of where I'm landing right now, is that my attention could be my most valuable resource right now. And to what do I want to give it in this one and only life? We have a good friend of my husband's, who has a terminal illness. And so his time on earth is limited. I cannot tell you how many times I think about it every day. So if this time is very limited for all of us, right, then is this what I want to be giving my attention to? And also, how can I be of service? Where is my greatest impact? Where is my energy best spent? And how can I guide people in that same pursuit, um, without getting sucked into the like, I want to pass this on to the 5 people who I know are going to agree with me, just because I get that hit of like agreement and rage and, outlet for. And so there is a little bit of needing to share feelings and frustrations and things. But more than that, I keep questioning, like, do I need to pass this on and spread that? Or do I need to put that energy toward creation, investing in something that has a bigger return? Might feel good in the moment, like sugar, or like it feels good to eat the sugar right away, but then in the long run, am I like burning myself out? So that's where I am in 2025 so far. Could change tomorrow. But I
That's fair. Yeah.
definitely feel that very deeply.
No. Well said. Well said, because there's so many things that are going on in this world.
Yeah.
But I've always had the belief is that as long as you keep your head down, you just know what it is your principles and your beliefs are, and you may not be necessarily pushing them on other folks. That's why sometimes I get into conversations, and I think it's just maybe because being in media, and not saying I'm being a know-it-all, I can kind of anticipate with the coaching background of
Yeah.
how conversations are going to go.
Yes.
Is this going to be fulfilling? And when do
Mm.
I need to exit out? Or do I
Yep.
need to keep it surface level? Because when you
Yes.
have that, that's when you know how much time I can actually spend. Because
Yeah, it's
there's
like
sometimes that you look at it.
it's an intuitive knowing. Move
Exactly.
forward or
Exactly.
back away in a friendly and loving way, but back
Yep.
away so that that energy can go to somewhere where it's going to actually create a bigger impact. Yeah. I,
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
other thing I've been thinking about, my grandma, it came up in my memories. My grandma died 8 years ago. She died at the age of 98. She was a legend. I mean, she was just awesome. But I think a lot about like, what would grandma say right now? If I called her, you would call her all the time and chat. But I think when I think about her example, she invested in the close, small community in which she lived, her faith community, her family, her small town where she lived her whole life, right? Where she had deep relationships, so deep that in fact, when she was in the nursing home, they just kept the phone in her room because so many people would call her. And so she just answered the phone for the whole facility because she had such a rich community of loving friendship, family, and connection until the very end of her life. And I would rather spend my time creating that than worrying about big things that I can't control.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. You know, before we get out of here, I want to give you back the mic. Plug
Mm.
everything you got going on. Plug the
Oh,
book,
yeah,
plug exciting things you have going on in your
sure.
world. Everything we posted in the show notes, that's through YouTube, that's through the audio side of the podcast. You get the video side of the podcast, wherever you're consuming it, just as long as you're consuming it and you're telling a
Mhm.
friend. That's the most important thing, and that's all I ask for. But back to you.
Yeah. invitation into my world would start with my book. It's called I See You. You can get it anywhere you buy books, and you can listen on Audible. It is my voice too. I recorded it. The book is like the foyer to my work. You can go in and look around and see if you like it, see if it resonates, see if this work is for you. You also can enter into this space through my website, which is amykemp.com. So just my name, AMYKEMP.com. And on that website, you can take the Habit Finder assessment that I use with my clients for free and get the full 44-page results. That's a PDF that you can, it's a snapshot of what is happening in your subconscious habits of thinking right now. It is not your strengths or weaknesses or personality or who you are, because we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are just things, but our thoughts impact us. And so for a lot of people, just the awareness of what's happening at that level of your brain is so eye-opening. And so those would be the two places I would invite you into my space. I am always open to meaningful new relationships. It's like the
Absolutely.
joy of my life.
No, absolutely. And that's the reason, like, I tell you, I do this. I do this thing. I love it. You know, for me, it's podcasting is not recreational activities only. It's a pivot, get out of the 9 to 5 eventually
Yes.
to be one of the best coming out of Canada. I'm just going to say it because they're not really, there's podcasts here,
Mm,
but the ones that I know, they are the best. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And
Yes.
there's so much that Canada and more importantly Toronto, the greater Toronto area has to offer. You know what I mean? So when I get emails that come and I do my prospecting and I look at the guests and I look at their message and I look at everything they're bringing to the table, I'm like, heck, this is going to be a good episode. Because I'm
Mhm.
always planning it. People don't understand. People think like, oh, he just puts these guests on there. Then he plans the titles. And no, no, no. Everything's planned. Everything's planned. Everything's structured. You know what I mean? But that's podcasting 101 tips for the general public. Amy Kemp, I appreciate you on the podcast today and everything you stand for. All right.
Thanks so much for having me.